to the Gate Equity webinar series. I'm Kathy Anderson, Graduation Equity Program Supervisor, and today we're talking about how teamwork makes the dream work. Maximizing roles and relationships to serve students. And this meeting is being recorded. It's on YouTube Live right now, so it's available to share with your friends right away. The PowerPoint is going to go into the chat, so you can have a copy of that, but it's also available on our Gate Equity webinar page if you would like to get it there, or if the meeting happens to close out. I am going to, sorry, my controls are all blocking my view right now. We chose this topic because relationships are at the forefront of our minds. With distance learning, it's now harder than ever to connect with students and help them to connect with one another. And in this webinar, we're hoping to talk about structures that support continued connection. Teams are an essential structure that provides timely supports, and it can be a real game changer for our students. We do have closed captioning available today. So if you look into your toolbar, you can see the closed captioning icon. It says live transcript or show subtitles. You can click on that and see the subtitles today if you would like to take advantage of that. We do have a YouTube channel. So in case you didn't know, it's awesome. We've been working on it a bunch. We post all of our recordings on the Gate playlist, so you can grab all of the old ones there if you want to check those out. And you can subscribe by clicking on the bell so that anytime we get a new video out there, you'll be the first one to know. If you do want clock hours, they are free. You can get partial hours. All you have to do is go through the PD Enroller link, and Ronnie will get that into the chat for us. And that PD Enroller link will give you links to both register for the 101 and the 201. And you can get partial hours, and then you watch the webinars and you get credits for what you participate in. So we will verify your attendance, and then about a week later, you'll find out what you need to do. So we're planning to group you a little bit later in the webinar. If you can just let us know your name, so your first and last name, as well as your role in your grade band. We try to put people together in like groups so that you can share. This webinar is brought to you through the Office of System and School Improvement within the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. At OSBI, we believe that each student needs to be prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. We are driven to transform K-12 education to a system that's centered on closing opportunity gaps and is characterized by high expectations for all students and educators. And we really do believe that we'll achieve this by developing equity-based policies and supports that empower educators, families, and communities. And we aspire to have all of our work be driven by our values, ensuring equity, collaboration, and service, achieving excellence through continuous improvement, and focusing on the whole child. The Gate Equity webinar was created with the purpose of highlighting practices that increase access to education and ultimately to graduation. Through our webinars, we're striving to go beyond equality, to think about the opportunities we have to examine and dismantle current policies and practices that result in disparate outcomes for our students, with the ultimate goal of ensuring that each student has access to the instruction and support that will make them successful in school and in life. We want to acknowledge historical contexts and engage our students, families, and communities as partners in decision-making because they possess the strengths and cultural knowledge that will transform our schools. I feel grateful every day that I live in Olympia. It is a truly beautiful place that is at the intersection of the traditional lands of the Squaxin Island, Coast Salish, Cowlitz, and Nisqually tribes. I have some words from North Thurston School District that I think are just so beautiful. These tribes have lived on and cared for this land and these waterways since time immemorial. We make this acknowledgement to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for our sovereign tribal partners and all Indigenous students, families, and staff in our community. Isn't that lovely? I like that a lot. We ask that our participants at this meeting also honor the traditional lands on which each of you are located today. So if you know what they are, that's great. And if you don't, we have these cool resources on the sides so that you can figure it out. There's a really neat overlapping map. So if you'd like to know the multiple areas that are shared, you can do that. You can text your city and state to this number and it'll tell you where you're at, which is really cool.
Kathy,
yes.
Can I just say something real quick? People are putting their information in the chat that needs to be in the participants list for their names and grade bands and all that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you can rename yourself, the way that you do that is you click on your picture and there's like 3 dots on it and you can say rename. So if you would introduce yourself by renaming, that's so helpful to us. It is really great to know who is in our audience. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Ronnie. In our office, we have created a cultural acknowledgement that helps us to ground our work. We want to acknowledge the pain and trauma resulting from over 400 years of racism in the United States and against people of the African diaspora. We stand with our communities of color during these unprecedented times of civil unrest, especially those who identify as and or are categorized as Black and or African American. We'll continue to center our work in leading with racial equity. We do want to take a moment of silence and afterwards honor the space for people from communities of color to respond to this acknowledgement first. Then we invite allies and others to communicate their comments after. And please feel free to use the chat box. Throughout our webinar, we invite accountability and partnership. If you have not muted your microphone, this is a good time to do that too. So we're going to pause now and just take a moment to reflect on current events and all that's happened recently. And maybe collectively we could take a really deep breath. We are now going to open the floor for our listeners from communities of color to respond to this acknowledgement first. If there's anything you'd like to say, you can unmute your mic and share. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but for myself, I'd like to say this acknowledgement helps me to center my thinking around social justice, and it helps me to put my work in perspective. It's super imperative that we center our work to create the world that we want to see. And I think the events that took place in our capital, they have to be condemned. We have a responsibility as educators and as parents and family members of young people to contextualize this for them, to let them share what they're feeling, to provide a space for discussion, and to offer hope that our country will find unity again. So I hope that we're all keeping this in mind as we move forward. I also want to bring to your attention Holocaust Remembrance. The 2020 Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany did a study on millennials and Gen Z across all 50 states. So some of the results showed that 12% of millennials and Gen Z in Washington state believe that Jews caused the Holocaust. 34% of millennials and Gen Z in Washington state cannot name a single concentration camp or ghetto from the Holocaust. And that number is 50% in Oregon. 58% of millennials and Gen Z in Washington have seen Holocaust denial or distortion on social media or elsewhere online. And I think it's also important to note that 64% of all US millennials and Gen Z believe that Holocaust education should be compulsory in schools. So kids want to learn about it. So keeping that in mind, I'd like to take a moment to highlight International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which will occur on January 27th. I also want to draw your attention to an upcoming professional learning event for you. OSPI is going to be partnering with the Holocaust Center to provide a training on Holocaust education and remembrance for educators. So we'll remind you with a link when that's coming up. On today's show, we are hoping you'll learn the value structure and key functions of teams and how to make them sustainable with the interconnected support framework. You'll get strategies for how you might use a team to support behavioral health at a school and district level. And we hope you'll take the opportunity to participate in breakout rooms to apply big ideas to your work and plan next steps. I'm joined today by Mandy Paradise, OSPI's Prevention Intervention Program Supervisor, Justin Poulos, OSPI's Director of MTSS, who's going to tell you about teaming models, as well as Ashley Boyd, Auburn School District's Coordinator for Prevention and Intervention Services, and her colleague, Christine Clark Gustafson, who's a truancy liaison. And we also have with us Leandra Kane, Principal at Cedar Heights Middle School from the South Kitsap School District. So they've done a lot of work to prepare, and I think you'll all benefit from their amazing expertise. We do like to get to know our audience so that we can consider you as we talk about these things today. So we're going to launch a poll to see who is here. And so if you can tell us a little bit about you, what's your role, what grade band are you most involved with, as well as how familiar you are with the topic. And while I do that, Mandy is going to grab the screen and we'll just be checking here. So in our audience today, it looks like we've got lots of counselors, psychologists, social workers, community liaisons, attendance liaisons, and grad specialists, as well as lots of teachers out there. Hey, teachers and administrators. And it looks like we've got a lot of secondary folks and some people who qualify as both. And people feel like they are somewhat, for the most part, somewhat familiar with the topic. So maybe we can go a little deeper. And Mandy,
can I close the poll?
Yeah, let's close the poll. That's a great idea. We've got about 79% have voted, so I'm going to share out those results with you so you can see them. And Mandy, as our Prevention Intervention Program Supervisor at OSPI, you're going to start us off by talking about the real importance of teaming and relationships. So Mandy, what have you learned? Share your important information with us.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Mandy Paradise. I have the pleasure of working with Kefi and some of our other colleagues at OSPI as the Prevention Intervention Program Supervisor. In that role, I get to often work with ESDs, schools, and other community partners through our Student Assistance Prevention Intervention Services program. I prefer she, her pronouns, and right now I'm coming to you from the land of the Duwamish people. So when we talk about relationships, it's generally focused on youth impact and how students thrive when they have strong relationships. Now, both prevention science and resiliency, research on resiliency, both show that of the known protective factors, many include relationships. So a few examples include connectedness to schools, family relationships, relationships with caring, trusted adults that are non-family, the ability to make friends, and lastly, having good peer relationships. Now, oftentimes, when we do talk about relationships in education, we tend to focus on the staff to student relationship and the information relating to what I just shared. However, in today's webinar, we will shift our focus to highlight the work relationships we have with our colleagues in school settings, and primarily the active teaming. So today, we will get to hear about the structure of MTSS teams, and then we'll hear from the coordinators of a district team working to reduce substance use and truancy. And lastly, we will hear one school's approach to relationship-centric teamwork. Now, times like these highlight need for connection and cooperation. It's like the very same elements the aid in our healthy living are also the same elements needed for healthy systems, right? Including our education systems. So we look at functional teams and teaming as both evidence and catalyst of an adaptive school. And the theme this month for GATE webinars is relationships. And at the core, teams are relationships. So also just adding that to implement a multi-tiered system of support requires teaming. And in terms, those teams function on many relational attributes, specifically things like mutual respect, common goals, clarity of purpose, trust, and solid structure. And I encourage folks to kind of utilize the resources here cited on the slide if you're interested in some more of the relationship aligned details. But before we kind of wrap up, I want to take a closer look at trust. So in 2017, the Journal of School Leadership published an article entitled "The Role of District and School Leaders' Trust and Communications in the Simultaneous Implementation of Innovative Policies." And I'm going to directly quote this article because it says, "Trust is a defining feature of organizations. It is socially constructed and construed over time, particularly in organizational settings, which is why a lot of researchers recommend referencing the life cycles of trust." So the trust life cycle concept provides two really applicable considerations. And again, I'm going to quote the article here. But first, trust can be eroded when suboptimal practices, policies, and conditions prevail. The second is that schools and district offices without trust are unlikely to make improvement progress until trust is developed. This brings us full circle with the interrelationship of teaming in schools and relationships and also school improvement efforts. So in closing my introduction, I'm just excited to say that where I'm leaving off, our other presenters today will be picking up. So through their sharing, we're going to get to hear the outlines and examples of the other components here, starting with Justin. He's going to talk about solid structures. Then we're moving on to our school representatives who are going to cover elements of mutual respect, common goals, and clear purpose. So thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. I get to kind of set the stage around some teaming structures and some big ideas around teaming. And what I want to do is just emphasize kind of the importance of like the relationships across the adults, the relationships and the supports from the adults to the kids in the work that we're doing. And we're gonna start here, and you'll hear from our district and school examples how this is embedded within their MTSS work. So we'll start by just kind of framing MTSS. What do we mean by MTSS, and why are we talking about teaming in consideration here? And when we're talking about MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports, we're really talking about an organizational approach to making sure that all students are receiving like really high quality supports, that we're in a nurturing environment, and that they're getting high quality instruction. And on the right side here, you can see 5 key components to MTSS. And the first one is team-driven shared leadership. And that's really what we're talking about here as a piece of this bigger kind of concept of MTSS. Why is that critical? Well, for a few reasons. One, this idea of cascading supports, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but the idea that students are supported by staff throughout the building, and while those staff are then supported by leadership teams in the school leadership teams are supported by district leadership teams, so that everyone along the kind of continuum to the student is getting additional support to be able to build this environment and this climate and these relationships with students. Secondly, is sustainability. When we're talking about sustaining efforts, we can't put all of the onus on one person to do all of the work. What we've seen, I'm sure all of you have seen it, is we have turnover, we have a million things on our plates, it gets lost, people leave, and then the work discontinues. So having a group of people with collective ownership to continue that work is critical. It also, kind of to that workload piece, it distributes the work so that it's not so much on one person's shoulders to make sure that it's happening. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is the idea that having multiple perspectives, multiple inputs of, of what the values and what the work should be along the way, so that we're really making decisions that represent our students, represent our staff, represent our families, represent our community. So the cascading supports, just going a little deeper, the idea here, and this is what I'm going to share a little bit is in a couple minutes, is just some big ideas around what these teams and teaming structures are responsible for. But the district leadership team supports school leadership teams, which support school staff, which supports students. And then that sustainability piece that I mentioned. A few years ago, Kent McIntosh and others at the University of Oregon did some research on what are the key variables to sustaining implementation of PBIS. Number one was keeping a strong team that has time to meet, that has defined processes and just kind of a strong culture of collaboration. And then you can see some of the others using our data, both fidelity and student data, and making sure it gets to the classroom, making sure those supports are in place so that we get to the students, right? We know that students don't benefit from something they don't receive, and these cascading supports, this use of data, the teaming structures, are making sure that it gets to the students so that we have the benefit that we're looking for. So I'm going to walk you through just some high-level teaming structures. The thing I want you to remember as you're listening is it's function over form, right? The structures, the teams themselves may look different in your district, and that's great. We need to contextualize it to what works in your district. We need to contextualize it to the size of your district, your staff, other teams that you already have. But think about the function of the teams and where are those functions being met in your school or in your district. So the first, that district leadership team. On all of these slides, you're going to see the same format. The left is kind of a representative, like who might be on these teams. Again, this is not by any means intended to be all-inclusive. The right side is kind of what are the big ideas that the team is responsible for. So I'm going to just talk about the right side, the big ideas, the function, and you can kind of look on the left and see what some of those potential representation of individuals might be. So the district leadership team, a couple of the things that they're responsible for is standardizing the process across schools so that each school is not left to have to figure all of this out on their own and left without support on their end. And then ways that, or things that they do to accomplish that is they make sure that multiple stakeholders are engaged, voices are heard, that the funding and the alignment across initiatives and efforts is in place, that the policy matches the practices that we're trying to accomplish, that the staff have the skills and the knowledge and even how we select our staff, our hiring processes are represented by the work that we're trying to accomplish. And then making sure that our staff have adequate training, coaching to do the work. And then, like I mentioned earlier, that data use, that we're looking at our data to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students. The district leadership team is supporting school leadership teams. The school leadership teams are responsible for that oversight and guidance of initial and sustained implementation. And they're contextualizing that implementation for their grade levels, for their school size, etc. I like to think about that school leadership team being responsible for this. They're building their collective capacity as a team. This is that sustainability. We don't want all the knowledge and skills to rest in one person on that team or in the building. They are then training and coaching the staff, and throughout all of this, there are continuous feedback loops and input back to that team from the staff, from the students, from families, from the community about what's working, what's not working, what do we need more support in, etc. Another one, and this is one that I think is often not in place, is this idea of a tier 2 and tier 3 systems team. This is a team that's not looking at individual student benefit, but is looking at the broader health of the system. How many students are receiving tier 2 and tier 3 support? How many are showing like a positive response from those supports? And within that, then we start to think about how are students identified for additional supports? How well are we implementing those supports? Do we need to maybe deselect something we're doing or select something different? Are we doing them with fidelity? Those kinds of things. So this team is looking at the broader kind of structures of additional support and the response across multiple students, grades, etc. Next, we have grade level and content level teams. Often at the secondary level, we're talking about content level teams. At the elementary level, we're talking about grade level teams. Andrew will talk about what this looks like in their school in a few minutes. But they're really supporting that tier 1 instruction, the planning, the differentiation, progress monitoring, etc. And then student support teams. So now we're starting to do that individual problem solving for students and looking at individual student data, what's working, what's not working, and what do we need to do specifically for a student, and how do we modify the supports that we're providing. And then finally, individual student teams. And these teams are really like developed around an individual student. These are often more tier 3 type supports that we're talking about. It could be an IEP team. It definitely doesn't need to be. Doesn't need to be a student with a disability or an IEP at all. But the idea that we're building a team specific to a student to support that student in their just quality of life, career development, social emotional growth, academic progress, etc. So again, these are really high level. Think about function over form. You may not have all of these teams. You may have some of these conversations within one team having multiple conversations around this type of information. But we want you to think about where are these conversations happening, and how is that cascading support happening so that the teachers and counselors and staff that are working directly with students are being supported in their work. So I will pass it back to Kefi.
Hey y'all, we are going to launch a poll. So we're curious about whether you have a school level team that meets regularly, at least once a week. And what teams do you know of in your district? And you can click multiple boxes to find those teams. So we've got that poll going, and Ashley's going to share her screen. And are y'all seeing this poll? Okay, good. You do have to answer each question before you can hit submit, because for some reason they don't like partial answers. So feel free. It looks like most people have a school level team that's meeting regularly, at least once a week. But there's a few out there who don't yet, and that's okay. It's not a big deal. This is a really cool structure that we hope that schools across the state will take on, and it is just an amazing way to build capacity and that leadership within your staff, so that if one person leaves, the team can live on. So it looks like there's lots of student support teams out there. There's school leadership teams. We've got about 63% of people have voted at this point. So let's just share this sample out so you can see it. It looks like a lot of people have a school team. Most people have a school leadership team. And there's a smattering of student support teams out there and grade level teams. It just depends on where you're at. So next we are going to go to Ashley and to Christine. Why don't you all tell us a little bit about what you've got going on in Auburn School District?
Great, thank you, Kefi. Like Kefi said, we are from the Auburn School District from the Department of Family Engagement and Student Success. My name is Ashley Boyd, and I'm the coordinator of Prevention and Intervention Services for the Auburn School District, as well as the coalition coordinator for the Auburn Prevention Coalition.
Hi, and my name's Christine Clark Gustafson. I'm the truancy liaison for the Auburn School District.
We're here today to talk to you about a new program we have just begun implementing in our school district called the Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, or START, better known to us. It is a Tier 2 district level intervention for students who have at least one alcohol, tobacco, and other drug discipline offense and are showing signs of chronic absenteeism. How have relationships helped us to achieve our goals, specifically around the START program? By having close working relationship with team members, our team members have common goals for student success and work together to overcome student barriers and eliminate risk factors. Our staff have meaningful connections with students and families. These relationships help students and families to willingly engage and build trust for future success. And connecting with students with supportive adults in their school building. These relationships help students to connect with a meaningful adult of their choice in their schoolhouse that helps them achieve the goals identified by the Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, or the START program.
Multi-tiered support systems. In our district, we use the multi-tiered support system framework for students who may need added support. Tier 1 is our universal approach, typically involving mostly teacher intervention and focusing on most, if not all, students. Teachers communicate attendance, expectations, and notify families in a language they understand when students are not meeting attendance expectations. Some of these components include positive messaging, engaging and equitable curriculum and activities, clarity of parent engagement opportunities. Teachers attempt to engage students who are not in attendance, which may include identification of barriers and attempts to address. They also report weekly to the administrator the students that are not attending classes, or possibly the interventions the teachers have tried throughout the week with each student with their attendance barriers. One of our other universal approaches is life skills program we use within one of our middle schools and all of our high schools. Life skills is proven to reduce substance use and violence for youth. It's a prevention program that focuses on targeting the social and psychological factors to eliminate risky behaviors and helps give the students skills to eliminate those risks on their own. This program is funded by CPWI, Community Prevention Wellness Initiative.
Tier 2 is our targeted approach, and typically it involves school level and district level interventions, focusing on some students who need additional supports. This may include at the school level attendance monitoring by administrators and counselors that make weekly attempts to contact students who have reported absent, along with personalizing action plans to further reduce barriers and increase engagement for these students. And sometimes it takes coordinated school and interagency response for non-attendance. Our school level teams are also expected to do home visits with students, check-in connects, and get other staff such as the nurse involved if they see fit. At a district level, from the Department of Family Engagement and Student Success, we also provide Tier 2 level supports from our Native Native American Education Program, our truancy team, our substance prevention and group counseling, our equity outreach and engagement team, our family engagement liaisons, our mental health therapists that are located at all of our secondary schools, and our behavior intervention specialists at all of our elementary schools. We also provide a social emotional learning assessment district-wide to all students on top of an expert screener that we utilize for our 6th grade students. Our Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, or START, falls into our secondary district level approach, Tier 2.
Our Tier 3 is our personalized approach, typically involving the most intense and frequent intervention for few students. This involves the next level of support, typically partnering with non-district supports. It could mean the truancy petition, community truancy board referral, most typically involving not just school staff, but other agencies dealing with physical, mental, behavioral health, and or family resources, and typically requiring further actions customized to individual students' challenges and needs. Our district has multiple MOUs with outside agencies to provide these services as well.
So what we knew before we began the START program was that our community truancy board was very successful working with students and families already, and that we already had positive relationships that the PIs, our prevention intervention specialists, had already built with students at their schools. So we felt that by blending these two components into the Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, we could further the success of these two teams. As you're likely aware, and what we knew before we started this program, was that teens who use and abuse drugs have a higher rate of absences from school, have lower grades, and their probability of dropping out of school increases. 1/3 of students who drop out of school indicate that their use of alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs played an important role in their decision to leave school. Our prevention and intervention specialists found this to be a pattern for most, if not all, of the alcohol, tobacco, and other drug students they were working with. They had a hard time connecting with them due to their chronic absenteeism. Our district's data supported these claims. Pre-COVID data for the first 5 months of school, so September 2019 through January 2020, indicated that of the students who had at least one alcohol, tobacco, and other drug offense, 25% of them fell into the threshold of truancy. In an effort to meet the unique needs of these students, the Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, or START's, goal is to re-engage students to prevent chronic absenteeism and decrease student use of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team is a collaborative process involving the district's truancy liaison, prevention and intervention specialist, the student's family, any outside community agency supports, and one person of the student's choice within the schoolhouse. That could be either a mental health professional, a family liaison, a teacher, a coach, or an admin, anyone the student identifies as a strong connection they have within their school. These individuals will work with the student and their family in a strategic school level approach at their school to identify and eliminate barriers. Our goal is for each student to increase their attendance so they no longer fall into the threshold of truancy, and to eliminate their alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. Our goal is to reduce the 25% of students who have at least one alcohol, tobacco, and other drug offense and fall into the threshold of truancy by the end of the school year 21-22.
Our plan: students will be expected to meet with the Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, or START, on an individualized schedule developed during the first meeting. Meetings will be held after school, with the first 1 to 2 meetings lasting an hour in length, and each sequential meeting will be a half hour. Students who have shown documented steps towards improvement with an incentive for their progress in the program. Our referral process: the student will be referred by the attendance team, prevention intervention specialist, or attendance and truancy liaison. The referral form must include attendance, grades, discipline, so the substance truancy advocacy team, or START, is able to get a snapshot of the students' patterns with attendance and discipline. Other valuable information provided by the referring team would be interventions attempted thus far with the student. We also ask that the referring team provide us with any known barriers they may have observed to the student with the student's school attendance or their drug and alcohol abuse. If the student has expressed barriers and reasons to their lack of school attendance or drug and alcohol abuse, we would also like that information as well.
During the meetings, we identified goals and positive outcomes tailored to the students' needs. We identified the barriers they have to regular school attendance, identified by not only themselves, but also by their school and their family. And we also identify ongoing reasons for their substance use, identified not only by themselves, but also by their school and their family as well. And then we develop actionable steps for the student, the parent or guardian, and the school to work on to help eliminate these barriers.
What we have altered for COVID. Prior to COVID, referrals were made strictly by the school attendance teams and PIs, the prevention intervention specialists. However, during COVID, we've had to alter the process for students and parents to self-refer. If they notice a sign of lack of engagement through distance learning and possible drug or alcohol abuse, they are able to make a referral. Referrals may also continue through the school personnel. Prior to COVID, students needed to have at least one alcohol, tobacco, or other drug offense. But due to the lack of face-to-face learning discipline, this has decreased. The discipline referrals have decreased. During COVID, students may self-refer or parent refer to Substance Truancy Advocacy Team, or START, if we'd like to call it, if they themselves or the parent feels there is an alcohol, tobacco, or other drug abuse concern, even without a discipline offense. We continue to use the truancy thresholds to monitor the students' attendance. Pre-COVID, all meetings were in person at the student school. During COVID, meetings are held virtually. Typically, in our district, we use the Google Meet platform.
What advice would we give to people who want to start something similar in their school or district? First, we would say start small. Substance Truancy Advocacy Response Team, or START, is currently only being done with the high school students. We hope to spread to the middle school in the next year, but we started at the high school level because we have district employed prevention intervention specialists at every single high school, and the data showed greater need at our high school level to begin with. Next would be to build relationships with building level staff. Find your person in the building who will champion the work for you. For us, it was the prevention and intervention specialist. This program doesn't work without the help and willingness of school staff to work with you. And then make sure the process involves student voice. This process is supposed to be a good experience for the students and not punitive in nature. We want the students to be heard and seen during these meetings.
Which relationships in our work make the team possible? Cross-department relationships. The school staff, including the prevention intervention specialists, have strong open communication and have positive working relationships with the attendance and truancy liaison and coordinator for prevention and intervention services. District level support. This program is a district level program, so we made sure to make the process simple and easy for schools. Once the school has completed the referral form, the entire rest of the process is put into place by the district level supports. Community partner relationships. We have outstanding relationships with our community partners who provide multi services within our district. This also includes our partnership with the Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative, CPWI, the the Auburn Prevention Coalition.
We've created all the communication and referral forms needed for this program. So if you have any questions or are interested in seeing if any of these forms, just feel free to email us and we'd be happy to share them with you.
Thank you both. Looking in the chat, I think that there was one question that I saw from Heather. What program do you use at elementary for social emotional learning? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, neither one of us work in the elementary level, but I believe it is Second Step that they are using at the elementary level.
Awesome. So far in the chat, we are not seeing any other questions, but as people have questions for our presenters, please get them in the chat and we'll try and flag them for you. Next up, I think we're going to go to Andrew Kane. Andrew, are you sharing your screen right now? Ready to go? Andrew is the Cedar Heights Middle School principal. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on at Cedar Heights?
Thank you, Keffi, for this opportunity. It's my privilege. I'm Andrew Kane. I'm principal of Cedar Heights Middle School. We're in the South Kitsap School District, which is a rural district and school on the Kitsap Peninsula. And it's a privilege to be able to share what we're doing to create a system of teams of people working together to remove barriers to students' learning. It's all structured around how can we create systems that enable people to build relationships with students as individuals. Additionally, I'm going to share a little bit about how we have brought our student advocate into the system and how it's helping enhance what we are doing. So our system of teams all started with why. We took time as a group to collaboratively, through a consensus process, define what our common purpose is. And what led to us defining that with 4 guiding values that really drive everything we do. The first is that we are clear that each student is as an individual and that they matter. As educators and teachers, it's our responsibility to educate these kids. So we have a responsibility to both identify and remove both social, emotional, and academic barriers that are preventing kids from accessing an education. We're also very clear on the fact that we can't do this as individuals, that the sum of our parts, that collaborative effort is going to be greater than the sum of our parts. And so we need to work as collaborative teams in order to make this happen. And then finally, for individuals to be successful, they need systems to support them in living and creating the culture they want to be a part of. So how does it work? For us, it all starts with the teacher. The teacher is the foundation. They have really 2 primary responsibilities: to build deep relationships with their students and provide them with strong core instruction. And part of that, building the relationships and providing strong instruction, is they also own the kids throughout our intervention process. So the teacher never gives up that relationship and they never give up that responsibility to help students have success in their class, no matter where the student falls in our other efforts. But we also know the teacher can't do this by themselves. The teacher needs support. And so we've created those systems of support through collaboration, and we have 2 teams that they serve on. One is their content-focused teams. We call them our job-alike teams. And it's all the teachers who are teaching that same content area come together to plan their instruction, which includes designing interventions and enrichments to provide the supports and extension for those who are for the individuals in their classes. These teachers are also supported through student-focused teams we call our grade level teams, where you have a team of the core areas: language arts, social studies, math, and science come together with a common cohort of kids, and they focus on any kid that is failing 2 or more of their classes to design, trying to figure out what is going on and create plans to help them have success. If the grade level teams and the teacher and the job-alike team aren't able to see that kid to success, then that student will then be referred up to our building-wide team, which is our student intervention team, which consists of administrators, our dean of students, our instructional specialists, our counselor, our nurse, and our student assistance person. And this team's function is really to ensure we're providing an intensive whole student support. We want to identify what is the root of the kid's issue, what's their need. And that leads us into a conversation of, if we can figure out what the root is, what interventions might we provide? We use what we call the 3-5-3 protocol, which is just simply brainstorming ideas. Well, first brainstorming what we think the root of the issue is, then brainstorming ideas, and then from that creating a plan of intervention. We then implement the plan, and over time, review and revise based on what happens. The system only works, though, because we've created structures that enable it to work. And there are really 4 structures that are giving our teams success. And the first is we've carved out time. They have time for collaborative meetings. Specifically, our job-alike teams share common planning time daily. They have time into their schedule that they can choose to use to develop those lessons. They're also given weekly designated planning time through our PLC model. Additionally, our grade level teams that are working around the kids are given monthly time to come together, compare data, and ask who are the kids we should be serving and determine what they're going to do about it. And finally, our student intervention team meets bi-weekly. The first meeting of the month is about new students that we need to collaborate and make plans for. And the second meeting of the month is revisiting those plans we've already been creating, analyzing what the results have been, and making revisions as necessary. The second structures that enable our teams to work are defining roles and defining responsibilities. So on our student intervention team, we have individuals that serve as our grade level team coordinators. They're individuals that serve on each of those teams, and they serve as the conduit of information between our student intervention team and our grade level teams. This enables us to ensure that we aren't replicating each other's efforts, and that we have a clear focus on what we're trying to accomplish. Additionally, we set up on that team who has what expertise. So administrators and counselors bring some expertise in social emotional learning. Our instructional specialist brings to that team expertise in academic supports. The nurse around health issues, and our student advocate is adding to us with support, deeper support with mental health and drug addiction issues. The final and essential piece of structure within our system is how we track information. We really have 4 things we do. 1, we have a data team that meets 3 times a year, and they look at student data from across the school to make sure that our teaming system is not missing anyone. We also maintain a spreadsheet that travels between our teams that tracks our students of concern and what interventions we are doing with them. We've implemented cycles for revisiting students to check in on their progress, to make revisions and have celebrations. And finally, within our system, we try to identify one person who will stay with that student and the family throughout the time so that we ensure they do not get lost in our processes. So how does relationship factor into this? I started by saying it's a system of knowing kids as individuals, and that's really what our structure is about. So all of our students are teamed, and our 6th graders are also blocked. So we block kids so that we can reduce the number of kids that a teacher sees, and we team them so that we have a common group of teachers working with a common group of students. And it's all about so that we can know them as individuals and support them as individuals. Additionally, we identify a point person to work with the family and the student. We can see the value of building trust with families, and if there's a common contact person, that allows them to trust and know who to reach out to, and it starts to build relationship over time. Which ties into that next point is we try and set up our system so that we do have multi-year relationships with students over the 3 years. Specifically, one example is our administrators and counselors work together as a team, supporting kids for the 3 years. And the reason why we do that is when you have difficult conversations, that length of relationship establishes the trust to understand that while it's a difficult conversation, we still have the same goal and we are in partnership. And then it also deepens our celebrations when we have successes because they've seen that partnership over time. And our celebrations we find are much more meaningful. Additionally, as Justin alluded to earlier in his presentation, we see the value of mentors. So one of our efforts in our interventions is trying to connect each of our students with an adult in their life who will be invested in them over time. And then the final aspect of relationship in our system is we want students with connected and supporting each other. So we've worked really hard to build a student leadership program that's focused on respect and connection, and its students connecting with each other. So an example would be that has come out of this is this year we have a club of students that was student created, where we have students supporting students with social anxiety. We had a student leadership group called our Compassion in Action group, who regularly plan activities designed to build connection between each other and plug kids into the school so that no one is left out and everyone has a sense of identity within our whole. So I started the talk at the top of this presentation saying I'd also talk about the role of our student advocate. And this person has been a very important addition to our school. One of the areas that we have struggled with meeting is our students with drug and alcohol and mental health issues, especially for the most intensive need. And we've been able this year to bring someone in, and this person works with small groups of kids, our 10 most intensive students in these areas for our school. And this is how our counselor captures the benefit of what our student advocate, Ashley, brings to our school. Ashley's role is unique in that she can work to provide long-term evidence-based therapy techniques to assist our students. Ashley is able to give students another tier of support as someone who works with a school rather than within the school. The service is invaluable as students benefit from the support that is deeper, that is able to provide a deeper therapeutic relationship. So what's been the result of this? As a school, our team, our systems, we were once a school of focus, and this system of interventions and relationships has enabled us to move out of that status. It enabled us to get some recognition as a school of distinction for our students' achievement. But additionally, and most importantly to me, it's the stories we have at the end of 3 years when we see sixth graders come to us who are struggling to stay in class, their behaviors, they're not focused, they're not doing the work, and then seeing them as eighth graders and see how plugged in and how successful they are. Our student advocate, we're seeing some signs that it's going to have a real benefit to us. I will say we implemented 3 weeks before the start of remote learning. So we've had limited evidence, but one example that gives us hope is we have a young lady who lost both of her parents at a young age. She struggled with us with social, emotional issues and mental health issues over time that she's been here. And because of the efforts of our student advocate, Ashley, she's now attending classes. She's developed some coping mechanisms for her emotions. She's doing her work and she's reporting feeling cared for and valued. And that is the statement of what we're trying to achieve with what we are doing. So what advice would I give you if you're wanting to start this work? First and foremost, I'd start with your why. By defining our why, we've changed our conversations from why are we doing this to how can we do it better? I would say systems are key. Individuals, if they can see how they're being supported by the system, are much more effective in what they're able to do. Additionally, I would say that defining roles matter. How the systems work together is built on trust of the other parts of the system. So by defining those roles, it helps build that trust that is necessary for each of the pieces to do their best work. And then finally, I would say know your data. Data over time, our system has been stronger and weaker at different points. And that data allows us to do two things. One, it allows us to ensure we're not missing kids. But two, it allows us to ask, how can we enhance our system to make sure we are getting and connecting with those individual kids and we're getting results from what we're doing. So that's our story. That's what we're doing. And if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. That's such like inspiring work to hear about. We do have a couple of questions from the audience. Yvonne was asking, can you explain more of how 353 protocol operates?
Yeah, so the 353 protocol, I should be able to tell you who we stole it from off the top of my head, but I cannot. But here's the premise, and we moved to it because it helps keep our conversations more focused. It's basically we quickly as a team trying to identify within about 5 minutes what are the 3 things we think are the root issues. Then we move into a conversation about what are 5 strategies we could use, and this is the brainstorming part that will address those root issues. And then when we're finalized and we're coming to creating the plan, we pick from those 5 that we've come to say, what are the 3 strategies we as a team will use with this student? So it brings us to a targeted. I will say we're loose in it, but it helps guide what we're doing.
That's so cool. What a fun protocol. We had another question. Is there any chance that you could share the data tracking form that they use between the teams?
Yes. I'll work with you, Kefi, on how to do that.
We can do that. Absolutely.
And no, I will say this, there's nothing magical in it. In fact, our form changes every couple of years because as we get in it, we find it becomes too cumbersome or not enough information. And I'm just going to say, we have not found that perfect balance between the 2.
Yeah. No form can cover all the bases. You got to have the context, right? We had another question. Andrew, many students are struggling with attendance and remote learning this year. Are your students experiencing the same? How do you think your team systems and focus on relationship has influenced this?
I would say we still have about 20% of our students who aren't, and it's about the same 20% when we're live, that don't do work, don't attend. But our systems have enabled and given our counselors information from which, and administrators, frankly, our administrators and deans and counselors, we've all divided up that list so that we're making regular contact with them. We try and do it weekly. I won't say that we always accomplish that. This is, we were given permission from our district just before break that we could start bringing students back into school. And because we had that list and that information, we now have 40 of our students, and there's about 60 who accepted the invitation to come into campus, and they're down the hallway now actively working on work they missed and engaged in all their classes. So did we solve the fact that they weren't attending? No, but it gave us a place to start for now that we can get access to them again.
Wow, that's so cool. I love it. Thank you for presenting, Andrew. We are going to go to a poll, actually. We are curious how y'all feel about breakout rooms because we've been trying that this year and we're not sure if people like it or don't like it. So we wanted to use some data just to check in with ourselves and see. So overall, this is how I feel about breakout rooms. I love them. Please keep them. I prefer just presentation. If you just want to listen, that's okay. And if you have ideas about how to improve, you can tell us in the chat. We're super curious what you think about this change and how we've done our webinars this year. If the length is too long, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Maybe they should be shorter, maybe they should be longer, maybe we're doing okay, I don't know. So if you can tell us a little bit about that in the chat, that would be super helpful to us as we plan for this next round of webinars. And while y'all are polling, I can tell you a little bit about the breakout rooms. So we're just hoping that you get a chance to talk to people from across the state. And part of the joy of breakout rooms, I think, is hearing what's happening in other places. So we'd love for you to be able to share with people in your room, what great work are you doing already? What parts of this model can you take back to your work? And what are you still wondering about? And so we are planning to send you to breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, I think. And if you want to come back early, you can. You can always hit return to the main room if you do not want to be in them. We do have YouTube Live, so our OSPI YouTube channel is going to be in one of the rooms, so you may be recorded, just heads up. Yeah, so we're going to go into those breakout rooms for just about, it looks like we need around 7 minutes. So let's try that. So it's a little bit, so it's in between, okay? In between the two. And I'm going to open all of those rooms. And actually, before we do that, I'd like to put all these questions in the chat. Can we do that? Did we do that? Sorry about this all.
They're in there.
They are? Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Ronnie. Okay. So I'm going to end, we're going to open up.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Where are you guys from?
I'm from Bellingham, Washington.
Oh, let me try to get myself. Okay. Hi, this is Annie Schuster. I live in Gig Harbor, but I work for Connections Academy, which is an online school across the state.
Okay, well, I'm out at Nia Bay.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow.
We don't have any. I'm gonna show you guys. The lights are out, so I look like crap. But I gotta show you guys these waves. Can you see them breaking over the breakwater out there?
Mm,
Oh, wow.
no, but I can't believe your view. Is it from
Yeah,
did you guys
they're
have a terrible windstorm?
yes.
Mhm.
We haven't had power since yesterday. Like the whole wave just engulfs the breakwater. You can't even see it.
Mm.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where I'm at.
This is happening.
We're
Yeah.
waiting till noon to see if we're gonna continue with afternoon Zooms. But how's your guys' attendance?
Oh, I teach first grade in Mount Baker School District, and it's pretty good, I would say. Like, definitely much better. We're doing a hybrid model right now, so much better in person than on Zoom, or like we use Seesaw. Um, but it's also, I feel like lately I've had this um like internal struggle with, is it like, how can I can't really get a kid to get on Zoom, and I can't really get a kid to log into Seesaw and do an assignment. So like this feeling like the pressure of, like, yes, like building the relationships, like having community, reaching out, and like being helpful in the way that I usually do when we were fully in person school before the pandemic, but then also like a little bit more now, but trying to find the balance of guilt that I can't really control, who is getting on Zoom and who isn't, and how do you like kind of work through that?
I'm experiencing the same thing. Um, there are things in physical school that we're able to control, and there's things during uh, Zoom school that we just can't. And I'm totally right there with you. And so just being that support for the family and the kid, like I have students and families that I'm just like, hey, here's my number. Call me when you're ready. When your kid's ready to engage, I'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just that gentle encouragement, but just support and,
Yeah,
uh,
I agree totally with what you're saying. And I think that that's something that like admin needs to hear too, because like I think that a lot of times like I'm getting the message, what are you doing, are you talking to them, are you calling them all the time, like, and I don't know that that's really the answer right now.
right, right. Like, what do we want? Do we want kids to be stressed out and resentful, or do we want them to feel supported because they want to come to Zoom?
Right. Oh, I think that's a great approach.
Yep, lots of support. Well, it's nice.
It looks like people are returning, so we'll give them just a couple more seconds to come back. We are gonna have a share out. So if you're interested in sharing out something that you heard that you think the group could benefit from, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute. And Madison, I'm seeing your hand up. Do you want to unmute? Tell us a little bit about what you heard in your breakout room.
Yeah, we had a kind of a brief conversation, but we were talking a lot about kind of like teacher control and what we can do as school staff or teachers that like we can't get a kid to get on the bus or log into Zoom or log into Seesaw. That's not really like, we can't actually control them to do those things. And yet somehow we are still feeling a lot of pressure about that. And I'm forgetting exactly who was saying a really brilliant idea, but she was saying that she had just kind of reached out to a family and passed along a phone number and said, like, I'm here whenever you're ready to engage. And I thought that was such a brilliant idea of like being really supportive, but also not overwhelming, because I think at least I've had some experiences where admin or support staff are just actively asking and asking and asking me to keep communicating with families. Like, what are you doing to get them on Zoom? What are you doing to get them on do their Seesaw assignments? And I feel like that is sometimes out of my control and feels like a lot of pressure, but also sometimes really overwhelming for those families.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other things out there that people want to share? We could probably take one more. Shanti, if you want to unmute, you can.
In my group, we discussed that we're all in this together, that we are all having the same struggles. We are doing home visits, we're emailing, we're calling, and the struggle of just trying to get students to engage is still nationwide. But it was good just hearing that from different people in different backgrounds and career areas, that the struggle is still happening, and it's just not with teachers or counselors or college and career specialists or nurses. It's with the entire building, and no matter what we try, we just have to wait for our scholars to be ready to join us and jump in.
Yeah, I know engagement right now is so hard for everybody, and just being able to opt out has never been easier. So it's yeah, it's a super struggle. Thank you all for participating in our breakout rooms. We do like to consider how can we take this work to the next level and from information into action. So some considerations for you. Maybe you could take your ideas to your leadership team. You have an idea for a team. Maybe you could share some ideas with your content level area or your PLC, or maybe you can ask students about what they would like to see and how they would want to see this work come out at your school. And we do want to share with you our GATE evaluation. So we're going to launch that poll for you just so that we can see how we did today. And if you do want more information about our webinar, or if you want to give us longer, more intense writing than multiple choice can provide for, we do have our GATE feedback survey that's available on our webpage. So anytime you have an idea that could help us improve, we really take your suggestions to heart, and we try to make our webinars as entertaining and feedback reliant as possible. So that is out there for you. And while people are looking at that survey, we have a few resources to share. Justin, do you want to talk through some of these resources?
You bet. So as I was earlier talking about different teaming structures and formats, these 4 resources listed here are implementation kind of assessments of MTSS. So the first one is around PBIS implementation. The third one, like a strong reading program, multi-tiered reading program. And then the interconnected systems framework is thinking about behavioral health within your framework. And then the last one is the district role. And all 4 of these, and this is my reason for sharing them, all 4 of them start with and have a lot of kind of definition to kind of some of those key responsibilities and needs for teaming structures across all the teams that I talked about. So I think they can, like, what it should be kind of striving for in some ways, and can be accessed freely and used to kind of progress monitor as you're continuing to strengthen your systems. That's all I got.
Thanks, Justin. Another resource we wanted to keep in mind is the System and School Improvement does have this really awesome newsletter. Lots of people read it. I've heard it's okay. So I hope that y'all can read it and subscribe. There's a lot of really cool tools in it this month that Mandy has really curated so that you can think about relationships, and I would highly recommend it. It's a really nice newsletter and has a lot of useful stuff. We are also a really good resource. So if you want to know more about teaming, this group has really done a fantastic job blending relationships and teaming together. And our emails are here. If you've got the PowerPoint, you can pull them off of there. And she's got them in the chat for us coming up. Next month, we're going to be talking about social emotional learning. Kitsap Strong is going to come back with us and talk about improving student outcomes with hope-centered education. And we'll be talking about building hope as a pathway to the future. And we're going to put these links in the chat. So if you think some of your friends would be interested in this, please feel free to share. We want to get the word out. We do have more this afternoon. We'll have a second GATE Equity webinar, Building Hope Through Social Emotional Learning and Motivational Interviewing with Kitsap Strong's Cody Russell. So come back this afternoon for that at 3 o'clock. And thank you again for joining us at the GATE Equity webinar. We will